Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Marco Calvani, Coleman Domingo, Will Forte, Erica Henningsen, and Kerry Kenny Silver star in Universal Television's The Four Seasons. The decades-long friendship between three married couples is tested when one divorces, complicating their tradition of quarterly weekend getaways. The Four Seasons is a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long marriages and old friendships. Mashable declares The Four Seasons a winner, and The Guardian says this is Fey's finest work in years. The Four Seasons is now streaming on Netflix and is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Comedy Series. For more information, visit universalfyc.com.
What do you call 200 microdramas put together, Sean, and you watch it in a big dark room together on a really big screen, not a vertical one?
I think we call them horizontal dramas, actually, is what we call them.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Welcome to the Angler Podcast. It's Thursday, June 12th, and I'm Elaine Lowe, author of the Series Business Newsletter. Joining me here in Los Angeles is Like and Subscribe author Natalie Jarvie, and from New York, the Wake Up's Sean McNulty. Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
So this week, we're going to dive into the rise of microdramas, also known as vertical dramas. You know, these things that you watch on your phone in 60-second increments. They're tiny little soap operas. They're serialized, and some people make fun of how cheesy they look. But you know what? It's a multi-billion-dollar business. Some people. Well, Sean will have thoughts. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And we're going to take a look at the economics behind it all, how some actors are making six-figure incomes in the space, and where traditional Hollywood fits into all of this. But first, Warner Brothers Discovery decided it couldn't let NBCU and Comcast have all that Versant glory and decided to spin off a SpinCo of its own. Sean, were you expecting to start the week with news of another media split? I feel like we kind of touched on this last week when we were talking about layoffs.
Yeah, I mean, Paramount was on my radar a bit for this week, and that they had another layoff this week. So that was on there. The Monday morning, kind of waking up to the email from Warner Brothers Discovery, and 8:30 a.m. investors call wasn't quite on my Monday morning slate of exactly when we might do this kind of thing, but not surprising. It's been in the ether, obviously, for a while, so we didn't know when, but I would say probably before the end of Q2 would be a good guess, and then lo and behold, it was, Elaine.
It certainly helps clarify the timing of that HBO Max rebrand announcement that we got recently.
Right.
That's making a lot more sense in the context of the splitting of these different divisions.
And the small jobs trim they had last week as well. So that was, kind of getting ducks in a row stuff. So there were signs, Elaine, of a rift. And lo and behold, they were true. So just like a nice microdrama of a soap opera, it's the corporate variety.
That would be a good segue if we were actually about to talk about microdramas next, but we're going to have...
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing, yes. But first, we've got a scoop from our own Ashley Cullins, author of our Dealmakers newsletter, about a new performance-based compensation model from Apple Studios for its TV shows on Apple TV+. So here to help us break it all down is Ashley herself. Hey, Ashley.
Hi guys.
Okay, so help me understand. Explain it like I'm 5, Ashley. What's going on?
I'm 7, Ashley. So at least there we go. All right.
You upgraded a little for him.
Yeah.
5 to 7 years old. Got
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So last spring, a year ago, people started talking about Apple going on this little dog and pony show around town with a new back-end model because this was the beginning of the streamers wanting to shift toward a performance-based pay instead of writing an enormous check up front. And things were sort of in flux for a while. And it sounds like they've dialed in to a back-end program for Apple Studios series. And it's based on how things perform against other Apple shows, including ones not actually eligible for the bonus structure. So the ones that are produced elsewhere that they license, your morning shows, Severances, those. The joke that I made in the piece this week is that Jon Hamm is actually competing with himself. His show Your Friends and Neighbors is an Apple Studios show that is eligible for it. But when they factor in the rankings for determining which of these series get the extra cash, they're competing against the entire slate. So he's competing against himself on the morning show.
So they're grading on a curve here, essentially, is what this sounds like.
Yes and no. It's actually, I think, harder than it would be if they were only competing against other Apple Studios shows.
Right. So the bonus is only if you have an Apple Studio show, but you're competing not against just Apple Studio shows, you're competing against every Apple original that's on Apple TV Plus in a given, I guess, year, or is this kind of just a year? So for 2024, you look at the whole slate, there's 100 shows. So break it down. It's kind of like there's like four tiers of this, Ashley. Was that it?
There are three different things that they're ranking on, and then they combine those into like an overall
like a score. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's subscriber acquisition.
Okay,
which
so that's if I
makes
sign
sense.
up to Apple TV Plus, the first thing I watch is your show, kind of thing, right?
Yes, and then engagement, which is viewers divided by runtime, and then cost efficiency, which is how
Apple?
much it's actually.
Right,
yeah,
come on, really?
right?
I don't know about that.
Wait, what is cost efficiency at Apple? Like, how's that defined?
Only one lunch, Elaine. No 2 lunches for you.
It's how much it costs to produce divided by engagement.
Oh.
And then to complicate matters even further, that's just the base score, right? You can actually be either penalized or rewarded based on how far over or under budget compared to the greenlight budget you are.
Interesting.
So
wait, you can get penalized? So what, do they take money away from you if your show doesn't do well?
So if you're otherwise eligible for the bonus and you go over budget 35% or more, you actually only get half of what
credit.
you would have gotten.
Oh. Wow.
But on the other side, if you manage to stay under budget by 35% or more, you get 150% of what you would have received.
Interesting.
Oh my God, this is so much math.
I like it. I'm good. Yeah, coming under
Sean's
budget.
like, I'm fine with this.
That's money in your pocket. If you come in, if you're not 2 hours late and you're showing up and you're getting the day done early, it's like, yeah, you get better. But that's money in your pocket, or it could be if you are successful. So then, but your show has to then do well against all these 3 metrics. You get your score. And then of all, say, 100 shows, not every one of these shows gets a bonus, right, Ashley? Yeah.
No, the bottom 25% get nothing.
Okay. All right.
And then it's into tiers, right, into quarters. So then the 25 to 50 start to get stuff if they're doing well in and after season 3. And then the 50 to 75% range can start off at $100,000 a point with season 1. And then it goes up through the seasons. And then the higher you are on the chart. And it tops out at, if you're in the top 3 shows and you're in season 5 or beyond, it's $350,000 per point. And it's a share of points. They pool them for the projects and it's capped out at 35. So God forbid I do this math again, but I want to say it was like $12 million.
Oh, okay. So there's significant upside. So reps, agents, they must be pretty happy about this structure, right?
Yeah. Yes, they are. And granted, the people that I talk to tend to represent talent that are going to benefit from this.
They're representing your John Hams and your Jennifer
exactly.
Aniston's.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So the people who were getting back end from Apple for shows that weren't necessarily doing very well are not going to be happy about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who's actually eligible for these bonuses?
These actors or showrunners or, right, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, starting there, but also, to be honest, when I dial up Apple TV Plus, I don't know if a show I'm watching is an Apple Studio show or a licensed show typically. So outside of your friends and neighbors, like what are the pool of shows that are even, in the running for these bonuses?
So the longest running one so far is Slow Horses, which is the Gary Oldman show. That one's actually in its 5th season. So if it happened to make it into the top 3 of Apple shows, that would get the max payout.
Man, I didn't even realize Apple had a 5th season show.
I mean, it's one of the few out there, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
You're sleeping on Slow Horses if you're not watching it, Elaine.
I clearly am.
I
do need to get onto. I know. Yeah, you and Richard.
Show.
It's one of his favorite shows. So yeah, that's one of them. But
versus
Ted
the people
Lasso
who are
is
just
not.
hate watching morning show.
Well, right. Morning Show is not. Severance is not. Like if you can name the top 3 shows of Apple, they don't qualify for this.
And Ted Lasso is a Warner show. Like that's not produced by Apple.
All 3 of those shows don't even qualify, which would probably be their top 3 shows if I were to pull out of that chart. Actually, I would think. But
Buzz, this new John Hamm show, I think has
your
potential.
Friends and Neighbors has a shot. You're right. Yeah, through this year for sure.
And then somebody told me Murderbot is like the best show of the year. So I haven't started watching it yet, but I'm going to.
Was it the star of the show or was it somebody else?
No,
okay.
It was somebody
Someone unaffiliated?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Here's a question, Ashley. Why now? Like, why are they rolling out this big performance-based metric? You know, it's not the first one that we've seen. Notably, the WGA has a streaming bonus now for shows. This is a thing it won in its contract after the strike where, you know, shows that reach 20% or more domestic viewers on a streaming service within the first 90 days on a platform get to split a pool. But why is Apple doing this? Like, do they feel like they don't have enough incentive for people to bring their shows to the platform or what?
It's a combination of two things, right? We're in this industry-wide contraction, and across the board, you can read more about this in the second part of my deal makers this week. It's sort of moving to a proof before pay model. So instead of paying a bunch of money for something up front, they're going to pay less money for things up front and then more in success. And so across the industry, we're seeing all of these studios shift to a more success-based pay models. And Apple, yes, is starting to get some buzz. It's starting to hit the zeitgeist with some of these shows. It's starting to get awards attention, but still comparatively, it's one of the smaller streamers. So to attract talent to make shows for them, they're rolling out this new program that has a potential for a lot of money. And they're also giving one-time bonuses to people who win Emmys. In certain categories. So it's an incentive to like come make your good shit at Apple.
You know, that all makes a lot of sense when you put it that way.
That's what the deal should be called. That should be it, right? The title of the deal. Yeah, I love it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Ashley. Listeners, you can read her full story at theankler.com. Make sure you're subscribed for all the latest in Hollywood deal making. Thanks again, Ashley.
Guys.
But on to our main topic today, a format that seemingly sprouted overnight into a multi-billion-dollar business, microdramas, or as some people call them, vertical dramas. Natalie, how would you describe your typical microdrama?
Great question, Elaine. So for starters, these are stories told over dozens of installments, sometimes hundreds of installments. They're told in 60 to 90-second chunks. Typically, there's some sort of a big hook at the end of each episode, each installment that makes you want to, carry on and watch the next one. And these are pretty soapy, dramatic stories. I mean, hence microdramas. So oftentimes they feature, secret billionaires or vampires or werewolves. One of the most popular ones to date is called Fated to My Forbidden Alpha, which is about warring clans of werewolves. It's an enemies to lovers story. There's a kidnapping. I mean, what more could you ask for in a 60 to 90-second drama?
Of course, yeah. Well, let's have a quick listen to a little bit of Fated to My Forbidden Alpha now.
Thanks for saving me back there. Don't worry, I'll reject you and then we can go our separate ways.
Reject me? You are aware I'm the Alpha of Nightwind.
Okay, so very soapy, very, what some might say, broad, right? Like, these are meant to grab your attention, like, right. It's not a slow burn drama.
Definitely not. You're going to get sucked in right away. And if you're into it, you'll just keep going. And I'm going to guess maybe if you're Sean, you're not going to be into it. You're going to be out on it. But
What? Well, secret billionaire werewolves. I mean, just sign me up. I'm waiting for this.
You're not a big soap opera guy, Sean?
I mean, do we count Succession as a soap opera? I mean, there are different kinds of soap operas. It's a broad definition.
That is such an HBO response.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm just saying, some people's, the WWE is a soap opera to some people. So,
That's
it's
true.
all in the eye of the beholder. Secret billionaire werewolves, no, that is not exactly where my interests lie. I will say that much. So,
But these are incredibly popular with a lot of people. They have been booming all over the world for a few years now, and they've really started to hit in the U.S. too. So taste aside, I think that people are finding something compelling about them, and it's starting to become a big business here.
And there are a couple of major players that have already made themselves stand out. Real Short, Drama Box, Short Max.
Short Max.
Yes,
Oh,
Short
man,
Max.
we have another Max. Oh, boy.
We talked to the CEO of Real Short, actually, for this story, and I found it was fascinating. So they crank out 40 shows a month. Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, wrap your head around that.
I mean, sure. Yeah.
But these are 40, 30 to 85-minute shows. So they're basically like sort of,
Movies
saying
in
like I made
percents.
40 episodes of TV a month, which is still a lot.
Sure.
And then the production budget on these is pretty modest, I would say, Natalie. When you said like $100,000 for a 75-minute production.
Yeah, that's right. They are producing these on the cheap. They're able to do that because they're working with non-union actors and crew and writers. And they're filming these in a matter of a week or two. They're, long days, full weeks on set, and they bang them out really fast.
Yeah, and Real Short has tripled its workforce to more than 1,000 full-time employees over the last year or so, if you want to get an idea of their growth. Joey Jia told us that he rakes in $1 billion in revenue, Sean, although notably slim to no profit.
Yeah, right.
Barely break even. Yeah, but still, $1 billion business is nothing to sneeze at.
That's a lot of money coming in the conference. I guess that's a global number, I would imagine, Elaine, because these are huge. China's the home of this stuff, is by far.
Actually, their top 3 languages, so they do it in 9 languages, and their top 3 are English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But yes,
really?
2/3 of their workforce is in China, 1/3 is in the US. But yeah, I was surprised to hear that their top language is actually English. And I think
the telenovela kind of, universe maybe has an appeal there. You said Spanish and Portuguese were the
yeah.
So that would make sense. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Sean, again, I know you used to work for HBO. Did you ever think that 60-second stories on billionaires and vampires would be the future of the business?
We brainstormed all the time about that, Elaine. That was really, how do we get into this market, create a real big, new revenue stream that we can't make money on? So that was a big thing at HBO. We hated making money. So, yeah, look, I mean, it's a bit, there are obviously $1 billion, fine. When do you make a profit? How much are you making? How do you make a living? Okay, how much money are you making on this stuff? I mean, you've had stories of people, how much, okay, if I'm out of work, this is work. Yes. Is it anything like a TV show at Apple or, no, it's not. So there's this weird in between for me on this in terms of it's better than nothing, but I wouldn't say streaming pullback. They're not making as many shows at Netflix and Peacock and everybody else anymore. This is filling in the gap. I'm I don't know that I buy that. Who's making a real living on that is a real question for me on this, Elaine.
Well, we're going to talk about who's making a real living
there's
after
a segue.
After the break.
All right, there we go.
But on that note, let's take a quick break. When we return, we're going to get into how vertical dramas are impacting traditional TV and film production and whether there's money to be made by the mainstream industry players who are probably looking at this booming business with some curiosity. Stick around after the break.
Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Marco Calvani, Coleman Domingo, Will Forte, Erica Henningsen, and Kerry Kenny Silver star in Universal Television's The Four Seasons. The decades-long friendship between 3 married couples is tested when one divorces, complicating their tradition of quarterly weekend getaways. The Four Seasons is a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long marriages and old friendships. Mashable declares The Four Seasons a winner, and The Guardian says this is Fey's finest work in years. The Four Seasons is now streaming on Netflix and is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Comedy Series. For more information, visit universalfyc.com.
All right, welcome back to the Ankler Podcast. Elaine Lowe here with Natalie Jarvie and Sean McNulty, where we're talking about microdramas, serialized stories that you watch from your phone. Natalie, it's interesting that Sean mentioned these being sort of like stopgaps, right, for traditional industry players. I know you talked to a leading man in the microdrama space who has made a real business out of this for himself.
Yeah, I talked to an actor named Casey Esser. He's like the Brad Pitt of the microdramas. In fact, he starred in Fated to My Forbidden Alpha. That was his breakout role. And since then, he has filmed dozens of these, and he says he pretty much works, every single day, year round. He started out making $500 a day on microdramas, and now, because he's the guy you want for your microdrama service, he can now pull between $30,000 and $40,000 a month. So
That's insane.
It's a good living. I mean, it's not John Hamm money, but it's not bad money either.
It's not John Hamm money.
Yeah. I mean, and he was a struggling actor before he started starring in these projects. In fact, his agent and his manager both fired him the day before he got cast in one of these. So for him, it's a great opportunity. And he's not just looking at this as he's going to stay in microdramas forever. He's hoping that kind of like soap operas, helped people like Brad Pitt early in their careers and make a name for themselves, that he can do the same here and that he can eventually make that leap into more traditional film and TV projects as well.
When he told you that, that actually sort of helped it click for me. in terms of like really framing like how do you create an on-ramp into traditional film and TV. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, comparing yourself to Brad Pitt aside, like yeah, like that's how a lot of people get their start, right? On like TV soap operas, or these days the version of that is your micro drama or your TikTok video. But yeah, Natalie, as our creator economy expert, where do you see the connective tissue between like people making social media stuff and then, vertical dramas and legacy TV?
I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see more of this format appear on TikTok and YouTube and other platforms as people try it. The main thing is clearly these shows have found a way to really hook people and get them engaged, get them watching, and get them paying real money, these like micro payments to continue to watch these stories. And I think there's a lot of lessons that creators can take away from that, whether or not they want to start making their own, serialized, dramatic stories.
Yeah, because the business model here, we should also, clearly state this out, is, so essentially you get like 6 episodes for free, and then you got to pay to finish the story is the gist, right, Natalie?
Yeah, and basically what you do, every app has a slightly different currency system, but, you pay $10. Yeah, you pay $10, you get 500 coins, and, to watch a new installment, you have to pay 10 coins kind of a thing. They also can do things where they can, lock past content, so you have to pay more to, watch something, binge something after it has all come out, that type of thing. So, these are small transactions. That's why a lot of these companies aren't profitable yet, but enough of these small transactions can add up.
I do wonder if microtransactions are the way of the future, though. And people have this kind of conversation when it comes to news media, too,
yeah,
right?
That's exactly my head went away. Yeah, right.
Of like, well, if people don't want to pay for a full subscription to the New York Times, what if they were willing to pay 50 cents per article or something? And then at least you're bringing in revenue somehow. It's not a bad model in an age of austerity.
I mean, that's exactly where my head went. And everybody in that business will tell you it doesn't work out, but no one's really done it either. So I'm always a little, kind of like, raised eyebrow when everybody has that knee-jerk answer to that question. We're like, oh, but you're foregoing the $17 for 50 cents kind of thing, is the argument there. But it's really interesting, like, it's kind of carved out this really unique kind of tweener space, which is, admittedly, it's not profitable, but $1 billion a year, like nothing. This isn't nothing, so. It's and like something like podcasting, which also kind of has that kind of 1 billion, 2 billion, or I don't know what that current number is for average, but that's more like advertising based. This doesn't really have advertising right now. That's not really a part of this equation.
Brands and advertisers are starting to look at this space.
That's my other thought of, where can you find some dough on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we will start to see more of that, especially as they continue to take off in the United States. Of course, anywhere an audience is, advertisers want to be there too. So I think that actually could be a really interesting way that you could see some innovation in this world, is if more brands do start to play in it. And what does that look like exactly? It kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah. The Real Short CEO told us that the revenue comes from both in-app purchases, like when you're buying the coins to buy the shows, but also from ads. So it's a hybrid model. What I thought was really interesting, though, is that they have no debt and no investors.
Okay.
$1 billion in revenue, no debt, no investors, he told me.
Yeah, well, when you're working non-union, you get, listen, there's some benefits to that kind of business model of knocking this stuff out. But it's not just actors who are playing this. There's other people who directed for, network TV, or other people are now starting to look at this as well as like, hey, the work's drying up in LA. Maybe this would be a way to, to have some other work going on. It's not just about acting per se.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, since our story came out, I've heard from a number of people who were like, oh, I've written on one of these shows, or I've directed one of these. So it is more common than I think people realize, because if you are in Los Angeles and you work in a creative medium, these are the jobs that are available right now.
And shooting in LA.
And shooting in LA, absolutely. I did talk to one pretty recent college graduate who has been writing in this world. He got hired by Real Short to work on a project. He's now working for another company in the space, but he was telling me that, these are pretty good gigs for people who are right out of school. You can make about $80,000 annually in your first year, and then after that can negotiate a 6-figure salary and back end in some cases on some of these projects. So, if you're someone who's, in your early 20s and looking for a gig as a writer, like, who wouldn't want to take that job?
You're getting a ton of reps in because you're writing a lot of stuff. So, high volume, as you said, Elaine.
I think the biggest hurdle that people in, quote unquote, traditional Hollywood are going to find here is just the quality of what's actually produced, right? I mean, these aren't TV soaps. these get into it really quickly. Sometimes it's all given away in the title because that's how badly they want to grab you by any means necessary of like, we got to get you in the first 5 seconds. So in the first 5 seconds, we're going to tell you like 3 different crazy plot twists. So it's really designed around retention. And even when I talked to the Real Short CEO, he said that they restructured the way that they write these stories. They went through several different iterations because at first they did the short stories and then retention was not very high. And so they redid it again so that they had like certain plot twists and things, but then people weren't paying for it. So then they figured out, as he put it, how to reverse engineer a story around a paywall. And I think there was a lot of people in the creative community who would really take some issue around that. I was talking to a showrunner up in Banff, and we were sort of parsing through that. But it's also kind of like, I mean, when you think about it, your traditional TV show was structured around ad breaks. So I don't know, how different is it from that?
It's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, the job's the job. I mean, again, this isn't anybody's, I think, life's passion is to get there. You're not telling a personal story or any kind of thing along those lines, Elaine.
Well, and I'm curious whether or not we'll start to see the quality improve as more people work in this space. I mean, this is still a really new medium, and people will continue to, iterate on the form, and maybe eventually something will really hit that people think is actually like quite good. That remains to be seen, but we are starting to see some bigger players get into the space. We had in our story that Televisa Univision is doing some work in this world now. So, as more kind of traditional Hollywood players start to explore microdramas, we could see the quality start to shift.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, just because it's done one way doesn't mean it's the only way to do something. And I think people, if you get more familiar with it, like, hey, what if you tried this? And that could be something.
What if we tried making them a little longer? What if we tried having Steven Spielberg produce and direct one of these? Oh, wait, that's Quibi.
Oh, wow. Doing the Quibi throwback. Look at you.
I mean, that comes up in conversation when you talk about vertical dramas. I mean, Natalie, what were people telling you about that? Because I felt like that came up in every conversation I had of like, oh, and this is kind of like Quibi. And some people were like, well, Quibi was just ahead of its time. And other people were like, yeah, well, actually, the thing about that is you didn't need that kind of level of production value or budget.
That's the thing. I think Quibi was spending too much money on the projects that they were releasing. Not all of them, but many of them had big stars and big name directors attached. And, so the economics weren't there.
But I absolutely think there's a space where you have these micro dramas that wind up getting very creative and more highly produced. And, like you said, Sean, I think it's kind of like this is a starting point for this part of the industry.
Could be.
Yeah.
One of the things that I heard that didn't make it into the story is someone who's working on a Harry Potter-inspired microdrama. Oh. Elaine, you and I broke the news that there's a Luigi Mangione microdrama in the
dramatization of the Luigi Mangione story. Yes, they are branching outside of Billionaires, Vampires, and Werewolves, as you can see. So that expansion is quickly happening too. All right. Well, if any of our listeners are interested in this space or have worked in this space, feel free to reach out to us at podcasts@theankler.com. All right. So let's take a step back from mini dramas to, well, what do you call something that is like 200 micro dramas put together, Sean, and you watch it in a big dark room together on a really big screen, not a vertical one?
I think we call them horizontal dramas, actually, is what we call them.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. A good old horizontal drama, as we used to call it back in the Nickelodeons of America in the 1920s.
So what's going on in the world of horizontal dramas this weekend,
nice.
Sean?
Yes. Got the good old How to Train Your Dragon. Anyone of the Dragon movies? No?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We will be there. We will be there, front and center, yeah. My family is very big on the Dragon Train.
Okay, there we go. Universal. And Natalie, probably a little bit old for yours, I would think.
We're not there yet. But, we'll look forward to watching it on streaming in a couple of years.
Exactly. You can start with the animated one, maybe. They have, of course, How to Train Your Dragon there. So that's tracking pretty big, 70, 75 million, probably even bigger than that. So get some momentum back. We've had 2 weeks of, kind of like a little bit of, malaise there, as I put it. But this should definitely reinvigorate things going into late June. And we have the Materialists, which would be something for mom and dad, I think, to go see. If you have a kid's babysitter night, I would highly recommend that. Great movie from Celine Song. Good.
Now it's finally on my radar because Dakota Johnson has been making the rounds. Like, she did the Vanity Fair lie detector test. She was on Good Hang with Amy Poehler. And I was like, oh, okay.
We know how to reach a lane
that's
low.
how it's seeping into my atmosphere.
Natalie Riley, is it in your feed at all? 'Cause I've heard a few.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And anytime Dakota Johnson is doing press is a good time, in
Oh
my
my God, it's the
opinion.
best.
She's
You guys
just
are here for the press show. I love
so
it.
good at it. Yes.
Well, go see the movie too. It's forget the press. She's very good in the movie. She, excellent role for all through Pedro Pascal. Come on, there's great stuff here. So
Oh, I'll be seeing it. Don't worry.
good. New York City,
Same,
New
same.
York City romance. So 2 thumbs up from me. So that's the new stuff at the box office, Elaine.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on this week's Ankler podcast. Visit theankler.com to subscribe to our full suite of newsletters and podcasts for all the latest industry insights. And if you enjoyed this show or any others, please leave us a rating and review wherever you get your pods from. You can also follow us at The Ankler on all major social platforms. All right. Thanks so much to Sean McNulty and Natalie Jarvie for joining us, as well as Ashley Cullins, our special Dealmakers guest. And thank you all for listening. I'm Elaine Lowe. See you next week.